be looking at the scope of RegTech Islamic finance regulation and governance. RegTech has emerged as one of the key aspects if we want to look into the sustainability of the fintech platform. And I'm so happy to see that Mr. Mohammed Muslehuddin Musab, who is doing his PhD at the Hamad bin Khalifa University, has taken up to discuss his paper on the area of RegTech. So please join me in inviting Mr. Musab, who will presenting on the scope of RegTech in Islamic finance regulation. The floor is yours, Mr. Musab.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen. So in today's session, I'm going to present the scope of RegTech in Islamic finance regulation and governance presentation. The paper is prepared for this conference exclusively, and it was authored by me. Regarding me, I am Muslehuddin Musab, a student of a PhD in Islamic finance and economy at HBKU Qatar. So the idea is that I'm going to address 5 primary questions in this regard, which are: what is RegTech? Why is it necessary to adopt RegTech? What are the existing structures of RegTech? What are the supporting technologies for RegTech? And what are the opportunities for Islamic finance in RegTech? So these will be the 5 primary questions which I'm going to address. As part of introduction is concerned, to get the idea where I am and what I am looking at, following to the global financial crisis in 2008, a steady increase in regulatory change has been observed, along with the amplification of regulatory alerts per day from 2012 through 2015. The analysts predict these trends are yet to peak because of a clear positive correlation that had been observed between perception of regulatory quality and GDP per capita of top 50 economies, which are accounted for nearly 92% of the global GDP. Similarly, the evolution of RegTech has proved quite contrary to ex-post audits and analysis concept. The idea is that until now, the audit and the analysis of the RegTech or the regulatory things are exposed after the events happen, the account taking is done, and similarly the analysis is done. Now it is ushering and emerging a real-time monitoring trend with a great focus on developing technological solutions to achieve greater regulatory requirements in a cost-friendly manner and compliance implementation in an effective way. Thus, the regulators of UK has been promoting and updating the promulgation of RegTech Sandbox. In the region of GCC, Qatar Financial Center, in collaboration with QDB, Qatar Development Bank, is under the process of incubating a fintech hub. UAE also has a considerable number of experiences related to fintech. Oman also announced the launch of Fintech Sandbox. And parallel to the regulatory bodies' advancements in the practical domain, a surge in the scientific papers related to regulatory technology has been observed since last 3 years. So these are the advancements in the arena of RegTech. So you see, regulation has become very much important, and to support this thing, technological advancement are needed, since the whole world is moving towards the technology, especially after the COVID-19, which has amplified this transformation. So RegTech refers to technological solution that streamline and improve regulatory process. The term RegTech is further described as the use of technology, particularly IT, in the context of regulatory monitoring, reporting, and compliance. So these are the major areas: monitoring, reporting, and compliance. The Institute of International Finance defines the term as the use of new technologies to solve regulatory and compliance requirements more effectively and efficiently. In contrast to fintech's inherently financial focus, RegTech has the potential to be applied in many regulatory contexts. Possibilities include monitoring corporations, compliance with environmental regulations, and real-time tracking of the location of airlines, to name some. But two simple examples of how technology could be used to improve not only regulation, but also the regulated industry itself. So the composition of RegTech is 3 elements are there: the regulatory side, the financial side, and the technological side. So if the person is not aware of any one side of this thing, then it could be the RegTech for any other field, but it cannot be for the financial things. So existing structures of RegTech, we have two basic structures: rule-based and principle-based. There is a comparison between them. You see, for the rule-based, set of detailed rules were required, whereas in the principle-based, standards for desired outcomes, consequences matter. This is a bit flexible, while the rule-based is stringent, because it is just the given options you have to tick in the boxes. While in the principle-based, the stakeholders can have a dialogue with the regulators. Transparency is given importance in the rule-based, whereas scalability and with business was the center of the focus in the principle-based. Compliance cost was high in rule-based, while the principle-based, it was pay as you go, and something similar to those strategies were there, due to which flexibility and freedom were observed. Innovation was depressed in the rule-based, whereas enforcement and implementation challenge had been a biggest thing in the principle-based. Excessive litigations had happened in the rule-based. Uncertainty and unpredictability was observed in principle-based. Ecosystem of technologies serving the fintech. If we compare the regulators in a row format and the users in the column format, we see a complete or a full 100% correlation or interaction between the regulators and users through the technology. These are the concerns: payments and transfers, lending and financing, retail banking, financial management, insurance, markets and exchanges are the subject of supervision by the regulators, whereas the technologies which are involved by the users are API, big data analysis and automation. All these things are the technologies used by them, and there is a perfect 100% correlation between them. Global RegTech size, it's a rough idea that these are the area: risk and compliance management, identity management, regulatory reporting, fraud management, and regulatory intelligence. However, it is gaining, the size is bulging up. So global RegTech market after a decade of global financial crisis was valued at 2.87 USD billion, and it is currently estimated to reach $6.5 billion by the end of 2020. However, these numbers are expected to grow exponentially at a rate of 52.58% compound average growth rate, and the market size is anticipated to reach $55.28 billion by 2025. You see that, however, there is a kind of mismatch between the practical area and the research field. So if we see what is the difference between the practical area and the research field, a comparison has been done by Becker et al. In 2020. It was an exhaustive review of research papers published in 10 high impact journals. Until 2019, the researchers actually pick up 55 articles and 347 RegTech companies. Then they saw that how they are coordinating with each other. So they find a mismatch between the coverage of research literature and services offered by RegTech related firms. The researchers found that RegTech is still a very young field, and the technological topics addressed until the date are very limited. The researchers agree that the banks and other financial institutions are searching for cost-efficient and innovative technical solutions because of overwhelming and constantly changing higher degrees of complex regulation across the world. We can clearly see that the RegTech firms are more concerned about compliance management. They are offering these services at a whooping 40.6%. However, the research response to it is only 17.9%. Identity management and control is 23.9% in the practical field, where the research has done only 9%. And strange is that financial regulations are much discussed at the side of the literature or the academic arena. However, the practical side, financial regulations in using the RegTech is less than 1%. That's why it is appearing as 0.04%. Similarly, the fraud detection is very much discussed in the literature at the literature side. However, on the practical side, it is less than 1%. Opportunities for Islamic finance in RegTech. So this is the major or the important message which I want to pass on. So as far as opportunities for Islamic finance in RegTech is concerned, so it is established by Hassan Barber in 2019 that fintech has no relevance to customer retention, while the other variables such as payments, advisory service, compliance, and crowdfunding has an impact on retaining customers in Islamic banks of these two countries, that is Malaysia and UAE. So the point is that payments, advisory services, compliance, and crowdfunding are the very subject of regulators and supervisors, and RegTech is serving the purpose, and it is showing, the research is showing that it has an impact, it is impacting the customer retention as well. So the next one is that essentially RegTech and SupTech in Islamic finance are aimed at enhancing the transparency, consistency, and standardization of regulatory process in a way that promotes proper interpretation of regulatory standards at a lower cost and ensures risk-based supervision for Islamic banks regulators. So these transparency, consistency, and standardization are very much important when we come to the Islamic finance and the Sharia compliance of the financial deeds. So that's why, again, it has become important. The regulatory sandbox, the way forward. All the researches concludes and come to the say that the way forward is in the regulatory sandboxes, because the regulatory sandboxes allows the regulatory authority to create a special legal environment ex ante the real legal regulation for the fintech firms to test along with the protection of the users. But in the context of European Union law, the effectiveness of national regulatory sandboxes is quite limited. The regulatory authorities receive the competence to build on regulatory sandbox and step to the next stage of so-called smart regulation and have the competence to reshape the regulation with balance. So in brief, we can say that regulatory sandboxes are the way forward proposed by all the papers until the date. Now the conclusion is that RegTech has been into consideration across the globe by all stakeholders, including governments, regulators, corporates, researchers, and academicians. There is a call for shifting the RegTech model from rule-based to principle-based model to insight-based model. Already I discussed and showed you that there are two types of model in practice, that is the rule-based and principle-based, but there is a call for insight-based model as highlighted by the World Government Summit in 2018. However, RegTech model considering the society at large is very shallow. So this is the area which need to be discussed a lot. That are the RegTech models taking into the considerations the issues which are impacting the society at large, leaving the business firms and the and those who are offering the services, financial services, but what is happening to the environment and the society or the poor people or the vulnerable section, these are not covered by the RegTech or the supervisory authorities in their technologies. Although the limited number of quality researches are related to RegTech, attention by the researchers in Islamic finance domain is further less and limited to the SupTech only. So they are looking at the matter from the side of supervisors. However, what about the society and the social issues, and even the business interest is not very much discussed across the papers. Therefore, in my humble suggestion, the standards by IFSB, IOFI, and IOSCO can be a good source for basing the research serving the purpose of value-based RegTech for Islamic financial sector. Thank you. That's all from my side. And I thank all of the organizers and the attendees to pay attention to this topic and giving me and for giving me an opportunity to present the paper on this important topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thank you, Dr. Musab. It was a very good session. I always say that regulation should always there to protect both the players and the consumer, but not to impede the innovation. And that's why most of the regulator across the world are trying to do that. It is for the benefit of the players as well as for the consumer. And we see that even the Islamic financial institutions will take and work with along with the regulatory authorities on that. Now, moving on to the last paper for the session and keeping the theme on the good feedback on the question. Moving on, the next question is to Dr. Muslehuddin, and you spoke about very important area of the regulation, and regulation always excite both the players as well as the audience when it comes to regulating any entity. And the question is very much exciting as well. The question is how can RegTech be used to address the threat of greenwashing? And what is the unique feature of Islamic finance you think that RegTech can serve better?
So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin. Thank you for posing the good and very interesting questions. So there are two questions that how to address the problem of greenwashing. The greenwashing is related to reporting and false reporting very precisely. And this false reporting is possible because there is no real-time monitoring. And the real-time monitoring is one of the most outstanding benefit of the RegTech. When technology becomes available and the real-time monitoring is happening, the scope of false reporting gets ruled out by itself. So this is the first part. As far as the unique feature of Islamic finance that RegTech can address is the PSIA. PSIA, that's the profit sharing investment accounts. It was the very much debatable issue in the beginning itself, and still for the profit equalization ratios and many more issues are there unsettled. And the RegTech will, again, the real-time monitoring will enable will enhance the feature of transparency. And by this, the Islamic finance will become more transparent, and also it will add to serve the real purposes of the Islamic finance. So it will bring very closer to achieving the maqasid Sharia as well as the real Islamic finance in real sense, getting rid of from all those which are driving us toward the convergence rather than divergence. That's all I can say in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muslehuddin, and I hope your aspirations, what you want to achieve from your research, and also the features which you talk about, the RegTech should be able to achieve, especially in bringing a better community, in terms of getting rid of the greenwashing in the industry. Moving on, the next question is to Ms. Zamal. The question is, can you pinpoint the main reason why some countries are reluctant to allow open banking, and what do you foresee for